Thank you, Eddie Murray. I really appreciate all you've done for Amy, all you've done for Rebel now. And here we are at the Congregation, which is part of Detroit history. We're going to kind of get into that because the Congregation has a place in history where the Blind Pig was literally right across the street, where the riots started, which then exploded in 1967. And there are tanks, literally pictures of the tanks in front of this facility, which is now a restaurant, and here you are. But being involved in the alumni as you were, you got a chance to talk to some of those players who were part of that world. Do you recall any stories about?
Well, back in 1980 when I got drafted, I got to enjoy going to events and charity events or golf outings, and a lot of the alumni were there supporting him early in my football career. And I used to love just sitting down with them and just hearing their stories and stuff like that. And Lem Barney and I became really close friends, but as Joe Schmidt and Mike Lucci, Frank Gallagher, I mean, all those guys that were still kind of hanging around, and Mel Farr, but they played during the riots, and to hear what was all going on back then, and especially the black players, Lem and Mel, what their approach was to it, because they didn't want to get, for lack of better words, too political, let's say, but also at the same time they didn't like what was going on, and that was just the atmosphere back in the late 60s here. It was a tinder block for box, I should say, that was going on. And so it was difficult for them, because I'm sure they had some opinions, but they kept them to themselves. But also at the same time, they realized they had a job to do, which was to play for the Lions and just kind of keep their nose to the grindstone type of thing. But for them to go through all of those experiences back in the 60s was definitely let's say trying on them, for lack of better words, and as well as also the white players. They were the same thing. They couldn't take a side with this thing, but it was definitely a huge part in Detroit history, the riots.
One of the people that we did interview, I've interviewed, was Willie Horton. There's an iconic picture of Willie in uniform coming here during the riots. I mean, standing on his car saying, please stop, and to no avail, but he made the attempt.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about you. You were Fairfax, weren't you?
Halifax. Yeah, so I'm Canadian born. So I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia in '56. My father was a career naval officer in the Canadian Navy for 25 years, but he was British, he was English. So they were still part of the Commonwealth back then. And so when he joined the Navy, the only position that was open at the time, he wanted to be a PT instructor for the Navy, and they didn't have any positions open, but one would open up like in 6-9 months. But they need a cook in the Canadian Navy right now. So you're enlisted, we're gonna ship you over to Canada, so you're gonna serve in the Canadian Navy and then you can come back. Well, 25 years later, he was still a cook. And so he served World War II and Korean War and ended up being like the chef for the commander on the base in Halifax, where I was born. And I was born in 1956. My father retired in 1960. So he moved the family to England. So what better place to live in England than is Portsmouth, where D-Day was organized. It's the submarine base and the naval base for the British Naval and Submarine Force. So from 1960 to 1970, I lived in Portsmouth, England. So I grew up playing soccer, rugby, cricket. That was the sports I grew up playing. And my father passed away when I was 14. And on my 15th birthday, my mother was Canadian. She was a Newf. She was born in Newfoundland. And I had an older brother and sister, 8 and 9 years older than me. So I was kind of, I came along a little later in life type of thing. So my brother was a teacher in London. My sister was married to a German living in Baden-Baden, Germany. And so my mom says, hey, I want to be close to my family during her time of grief. So we moved to Victoria, British Columbia. So Halifax is the East Coast Naval Base of the Canadian Navy, and Victoria, British Columbia, is the West Coast Naval Base of the Canadian Navy. So a lot of her friends and some of her relatives were living there at the time. So that's what I did. In 1970, I moved to Victoria, British Columbia. So thank God they had a lot of the British sports and traditions, tea at four, all that kind of stuff that was going on in England. They had a lot of those types of things going on in Victoria. So for me, it was, they had soccer and rugby in the schools, so I got to play those things, and then got introduced to football basically when I was trying to think, maybe 16, like a year later or so. I got kind of introduced to playing it. So I didn't grow up wanting to be a kicker. I naturally had the ability to have a hard shot in soccer, or in rugby I would kick the penalty kicks and the converts after tries and stuff like that. So I always had that ability, and I love to kick and punt anything round or oblique. I'd love to put my foot on it. So it just kind of came natural. My father had a great love for soccer, and he was kind of like my early coach kind of growing up before he passed. So it's just again, just that evolution of sports that I loved and where I lived and all of that kind of stuff really kind of rounded me out.
But you're Canada. How come no hockey?
Yeah, I might be the only Canadian that can't skate. So normally that's a prerequisite when you have a Canadian passport. But yeah, I cannot skate for the life of me. My wife, Cindy, right now, when our daughter's 28, but when she was young, we have a pond in our home in Waterford in the back, and so we'd always clear out the pond and skate and all that kind of stuff. And my daughter wanted me to skate with her, and there were some old skates that were kind of sitting around. So I put them on. I took 3 steps, A over tea kettle, as you know, and I smashed my head on the ice. I was out cold. And I'm going, okay, so I'm not going to bother trying to do this ever again. I panicked my daughter and her friend and my wife, who was watching me from inside the house. So, yeah, my skating days were very short. Yeah.
But then you're being in Canada, and though the Canadian, certainly Canadian Football League, but did you spend time watching things like the NFL? Was that a normal thing as a teenager?
Well, back in the early 70s, I would watch it. Yes, I would watch it. But Canadian football was kind of, more prevalent on TV than the NFL at the time. So, so I kind of followed a lot of the CFL at the time. One of my, for lack of better words, early kicking mentors was a gentleman called Dave Cutler. Dave Cutler had just an unbelievable career in the NFL. He was a kicker. At one time, he was the leading scorer in football history, both NFL. He scored over 2,200 points in the CFL. He won 6 Grey Cups with the Edmonton Eskimos, and he was from Victoria, British Columbia. I actually played football with his brother Jim in Victoria, and Kathy Cutler, his sister, and I were in school together. In fact, I just went back to my 50th high school reunion and got to see Kathy and catch up with her, and I saw Dave also, which was cool. So Dave was kind of like that early kind of kicking mentor to me at the time. So I just, like I said, it was not on my list of things to do. My first love really was soccer. I was all invested in soccer. I was trying to make the local boy. We lived, like I said, in Portsmouth, and I was trying to make the boys team. So they would have different levels of team, apprenticeships type of things that they have now. They have academies. They're now called academies over there. So I was trying to be on the boys team for Portsmouth, and the timing of my father passing, my mother wanting to move, I would either have to stay there, and for lack of better words, billet with a family there, and or go with my mom. So of course my mom won out, and I had to move with her to Canada.
So I'm curious, you kind of have touched 3 countries. You got England, you've got Canada, you've got United
US.
States. So when you pull out a passport, what do you have?
I became a U.S. citizen about 6 years ago.
Okay.
So all my career in the NFL, I had a green card.
Okay.
So for 30 some odd years, living, so from 1980 till, like I said, 6 years ago, I had a green card. So Yeah, so I had married a Canadian in college, and we divorced 2 or 3 years into my career. I've been married to my wife Cindy now for 30, going on 32 years. And it was always kind of like a running joke, when we got married, she goes, well, you're marrying me for citizenship, And I said, well, no, I'm fine. I got a green card. And so it would be like every 2 or 3 years, she goes, are you ever thinking you're going to become a citizen? And I always used to kind of like joke, well, I'm going to wait to see if this thing's going to, work out. I might need to go south because Windsor's south of Detroit. I always say, I might need to cross the border and go back to Canada if this doesn't work out. But that joke didn't last very long. And so, like I said, 6, 7 years ago, I went through the process and applied for citizenship and went through the vetting process, took the examination, and I got sworn in. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Welcome to America.
Thank you.
But you're in Canada, and a guy from a Tulane coach, or at least has a contact there.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, it's the fork in the road for me. I mean, so at the time, I was I was not a good student. I didn't like school. I liked sports. So I didn't apply myself in school like I did to my sports. So I graduated from high school, wasn't from a family of wealth, didn't really want to go to college, had no opportunity, for lack of better words, to wasn't being given any scholarships or doing anything like that. So I worked. I actually worked in a lumber yard. A friend of mine's dad owned a lumber yard, so I was a forklift driver and helped people with picking out lumber and plywood and just put it in their cars and stuff like that. So during that year out of school, I was playing football. So they had football where you could play up to like 25 years old, like sandlot type of thing. And I'd only been playing, like I said, about 2 or 3 years at the time. And Frank Hindle, God rest his soul, was the coach of the team that I was on, the Sandage Hornets. And he had just taken a job with the Victoria Cougars, which was the older team. And he said, hey, Ed, I got a letter from the British Columbia Alliance, and they're having a camp on the island, because Victoria's on Vancouver Island, and they're going to pick people from the camp here to go to Vancouver and then have a week-long full contact camp in Vancouver, and there will be college coaches at this camp. I think you should go. And I said, well, why? And he goes, well, you can maybe get a scholarship. And again, school was not really high on my list. I'll be honest with you, was not high on my list. And so long story short, I went to the camp, got chosen to go to the camp in Vancouver. I now needed to take a week off of work, so I asked my friend's dad, hey, can I do this? And he goes, well, what's going to happen? And I'm going to get a scholarship, and I'm going to go play football and all this kind of stuff. Lying through my teeth. I just wanted to go and get away from work for a week. Side note, my mother was in the thralls of cancer and was not doing well, and was in and out of hospital, for lack of better words. And so I did. He gave me the time off work. I go to the camp. And there was 2-a-days, so there were a few days I didn't go to 2-a-days. I just went to 1-a-days because I was seeing guys that I knew in college in high school that were now in college over there. They were at Simon Fraser or University of British Columbia. And so we just got together, and so I just chose not to go to morning practices. So at the end of the camp, they had a inter-squad scrimmage. And again, we're in pads, we're in everything. And there was, 75, 80 kids at the camp. And so at the scrimmage, there was, mom, dad, grandpa, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, kind of at the thing. There wasn't, and at halftime, we didn't go to locker rooms. We just went to the sideline. So I'm just getting a drink. And Cal Murphy, who was the head coach of the BC Lions at the time, comes up to me and he says, hey, are you the kid from Victoria that I heard that can kick? And I said, yeah. He says, do you mind kicking for me? I haven't seen you much this week. And I didn't do any kicking the whole week. Okay, so he said, I hadn't seen you. He said, do you mind kicking for me right now? And I said, no, well, fine. So they got a snapper and a holder, and we went out, grabbed a bunch of balls, started kicking extra points. And like most times, you just kind of move back and forth from hash mark to hash mark. So as I'm moving back, the rest of the camp's kind of like horseshoeing around me, and they're yelling and giving me the business and all this kind of stuff. And I get all the way back to like 52 yards before I miss. And so Cal goes, okay, enough, let's get back and finish the scrimmage. So we do. We finished the scrimmage. I'm in the shower, getting ready to jump on the bus to catch the ferry back to Victoria, go see my mom. And an assistant coach says, hey, Coach Murphy wants to talk to you. So I go into his office, and he said, hey, that was pretty impressive what you did. You didn't know I was going to do it. And, you really showed me a lot that, in fact, this year, the Canadian League has a new thing. They're having junior players attend training camp. It's kind of like a I don't know, scout team kind of thing, whatever. This that they can come and develop talent, younger talent. So it was mostly for college kids. Well, I'd just gotten out of high school, and I played 3 years of football, mostly sandlot football, not like anything really big. So long story short, he says, we would like to invite you to training camp this year. And I said, well, what does that entail? He says, well, you're going to have to sign a contract. And if you make the team, then the contract would go through. But otherwise, you won't get paid. You won't be anything. We'll bring you in. We'll put you up, and then you'll compete for a position and see what happens. Would you like to do that? And I said, yeah, that sounds great. So I do. I sign a contract. If I make the team, I make $500 signing bonus, and I'll make $11,000 my first year. So I thought, oh my God, no one makes this kind of money, right? So I now knew what I would make if I made the team. So I went back to Victoria, started working out, taking care of my mom. And about 2 or 3 weeks after the camp, I was getting these phone messages. Willard Wells from Tulane University, please give me a call back. Well, there's no Google. I can't Google Tulane. Anything with university in it, I didn't really want to do it, call him back. So he catches me on a Saturday. I was off or something like that. And he goes, hey, Ed, I'm Coach Willard Wells, Tulane University. I'm calling to see if you'd like to come on a recruiting trip to Tulane University. And I said, no, I have no intentions of doing that. And he goes, okay, well, I know your situation with the BC Lions. If things change, take my number down and call me. I don't take his number down. I just ignore him. So now I'm getting ready. Now I go to camp. Camp's in Penticton, British Columbia, which is kind of like the Napa Valley of Canada. It's beautiful. It's up in the mountains, beautiful vineyards. It's gorgeous. So we're at Penticton. I'm in camp 2 days. Well, back then, you couldn't be just a kicker. You had to play another position. And again, I've only played 3 years of football, and now I'm competing for a professional job in the Canadian League. And that same year, a guy named Louis Passaglia. So Louis ended up being one of the greatest BC Lions players in history. He kicked and was a wide receiver and punted. Great player. He was drafted the year I've been trying to beat him out. So it became very evident really quickly that this was way over my head. But at the same time, my mother was taking her turn before she passes. And so I wasn't head-wise into what was going on. So I went out for practice, getting ready to go to special teams. And this guy comes up to me and he says, hi, I'm Willard Wells from Tulane University. And I'm going, again, I still have no idea what Tulane is. I have no idea where it is. And he said, hey, when you finish practice, I'd like to talk to you. No problems. I'm in practice, go out, kicking, not doing well. Practice, and I used to play slot back, the guy in motion in Canadian football. So wasn't catching the ball, all that kind of stuff. And during practice, it just kind of hit me. It was like an epiphany. And I'm going, I should not be here. My mom's not doing well. I'm definitely not doing well. This game's over my head. And so I went to Coach Murphy during practice. I said, hey, Coach, my mom's taking the turn. He knew all the situation. And I said, I just can't be here. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. I've enjoyed everything. It's been a great education, all that kind of stuff. And he goes, go over and talk to Coach Wells right now. So I do. I go over and talk to him. He said, would you like to go on a recruiting trip? And I said, okay, but I have to go see my mom. So I do. I get changed, packed up, go back to Victoria, go see my mom in the hospital. They set a time for me to go. And so during that few days or so, about a week or so in that period, another mentor of mine was a guy named Joe Beckers, who was my soccer coach in high school. And he kind of became my dad when my dad had passed, so he kind of oversaw a lot of stuff. He was trying to push me and all this stuff, and it was right before I was going on my recruiting trip. And he said, look, Ed, if they offer you a scholarship, take it, okay, take it. And I said, Joe, but me in school. And he goes, look, you're not stupid, you're lazy, okay? You're lazy. You're not stupid. So if go and take advantage of all that, because they're going to offer you tutors and help you and all this kind of stuff, do it. Okay? Because you're not stupid, you're just lazy. Apply yourself like you do in sports to school. Use the resources that you can in college and stuff. So I went on a recruiting trip, loved it right away, signed with them, and I graduated 4 years later. So that's the biggest achievement for myself, that all those things happened. But the backstory is how that happened.
Sure, wow.
Okay, so how does all those things come together that this opportunity hit me? So the backstory is Cal Murphy was a head coach at San Jose State, and one of his assistant coaches was Willard Wells.
Wow.
Willard was the recruiting coordinator and the defensive line coach. So when Cal took the job for the BC Lions, new coach comes in and they don't get rid of the recruiting coach because they want to keep the recruiting class there. So they kept Willard for like 2 or 3 years, and then they end up firing him. So he gets fired, and he signs under the new coaching staff at Tulane University under Larry Smith. So Larry Smith was the head coach his first year, signed Willard as a recruiting coordinator and a defensive, I think he was a linebacker coach if I remember at the time. And he's from Powell River, British Columbia. Okay, I think today there's still not a traffic light in that town. Okay, so it's a logging town and an Indian reservation. So back then they had logging roads. They didn't have paved. I mean, it seaplane or logging road. That's how you got to Powell River. Okay, so when he got fired and took the job in New Orleans with Tulane, he wanted to go see his family back in Powell River before he had to go report to Tulane for spring football. So he flies into Vancouver, and here's where my life changes. He thought, before I go see my family, I'm going to go see Cal. Go say hi to him. Hey, I'm in town. Hope things are good, that kind of stuff. So he goes to the BC Lions offices, goes into Cal Murphy's office. Cal has film he's looking at of me kicking at halftime at that camp.
Oh, no kidding.
And that's how I got found. He could have picked any other time to go see his family, to go see Cal, go see anybody. I'd still be driving a forklift back in Victoria if that didn't happen.
That's remarkable. And then now you're at Tulane with a scholarship
Mm-hmm.
and have a career such that you ultimately become inducted into the Tulane University Athletics Hall of Fame. And without going through all the statistics, it's just a remarkable career. But after once you get done with the career at Tulane, did you think there was life after being with the Green Wave?
Well, I definitely gained more confidence in my ability. Even when I went there as a freshman, I wanted to be a wideout. I used to joke with Coach Wells. I said, "Hey, can I go over to the wideouts and work out with them?" And he goes, "No, you got a scholarship just to kick a football." Okay, and I'm going, that's pretty boring doing that. Okay, but so I always fought it. But he said, "Look, just work on kicking." So I did. I paid a lot of attention, putting what I was doing wrong. I really did a lot of film study of myself and worked on approaches and things that were going to kind of help me be more consistent. So I really worked at trying to be a better kicker. And so I played as a freshman. Because that was, I think the year before was the first year that freshmen could play in the NCAA, I believe. So I was in that second year. And we didn't have a good team, but because we weren't scoring a lot of points, I was kicking a lot of field goals. Okay, so I ended up doing well and having a good career over the 4 years. And my senior year, we were 9-2 and played Penn State in the Liberty Bowl. So that was a lot of fun to enjoy that experience, to play in a bowl game in college. And then coming out, it was just, there's NFL Network now. We had nothing. The draft wasn't on TV, wasn't on radio, wasn't any, so you had no bearing of what was going on. But there were coaches, and that they had a scouting system at the time called the Bledsoe Scout. And what they would do is they would have like 6 or 7 teams that they would scout for. And those 6 or 7 teams, and they're all regional guys. So in the South, all the schools in the South, they would give them a list. Hey, this guy at Alabama and this guy at LSU and this person here. So they'd give them a list of all the people that they needed to take a look at and do a report on. So there were Bledsoe scouts, and then there were position coaches that would do it sometimes, and as well as scouts for teams. So back then, I think the Detroit Lions had 3 scouts. Now they got 12. The staffs were all huge, and player personnel directors, we didn't have any of those back in '80. So long story short, it was just trying to get a feel for where I was, and getting ready for the draft. My story is, and you might I know you're New York, but at the time in 1980, Bill Belichick was the special teams coach for the Giants. And he came to work me out. He's the only position coach that worked me out. It's kind of an unusual, well, it's Bill Belichick's story, so it's always interesting. Sure, I got a call from our sports information director, ML Lagarde. He says, hey, there's a coach from the Giants here. He's wondering if you could be available on the field at such and such a time. And I said, hey, I'm just studying for finals. I have no more classes. I'm just kind of bearing down, trying to get all my last stuff done and graduate and all that kind of stuff. So he said, okay. So I go to the field, and I meet Coach Belichick, and he's putting me through all these linebacker drills and DBs, and it's May in New Orleans, which is hot and humid, at 7 in the morning. It's, and so I'm running around, I'm sweating, and I stop him. I said, Coach, do you know I'm a kicker? Because I'm exhausted. Okay, because I don't work out like this. I don't do any speed stuff or any bag drills and all this kind of stuff that they had me do. And I said, if you want me to kick right now, I can't kick. I said, I'm exhausted. And he goes, that's okay. No worry, I understand. He said, do you have time tomorrow? I said, yes, I do. He said, okay. He said, I understand you're married. And I said, yeah. And he said, I'd like to take you and your wife out to dinner, if you don't mind. And so dinner, college, hey, why not? New Orleans, there's so many places. So of all the things, there's a restaurateur family in New Orleans called the Brennan's family. They own Commander's Palace, some of the 5 or 6 top restaurants in New Orleans. And one of them's called the Quarter Two Sisters. It's still open in the French Quarter. So, I'm going, oh my God, this is amazing. It's French cuisine, and I'm used to red beans and rice. So anyway, he takes us out to dinner. Great experience, great food. Talk to me and my wife and all this kind of stuff. Next day, I kick for him, and I do really well. Nothing. Now the draft comes up. So ML Lagarde says, hey, and at that time, how the draft would do it, they would call the school if you got drafted, and then find out your number to call you to tell, because it wasn't all on TV like it is now and getting all these reactions. They had none of that. So they would call the school, and ML Lagarde says, hey, I'm just double checking. Is this your number at your apartment? Yes, it is. Okay, good. There's you and our quarterback, Rock Contis, and Elton Alexis are wide out. He said, you 3 guys are kind of like what we're hearing the most that might get drafted. So just stay close to your phone. So the first day of the draft goes on, and I'm just studying. Phone's ringing now and again. It's mostly guys just asking if something happened. And I'm going, no. I said, if I get drafted, it's going to be way, we had 12 rounds back then. I said, it's going to be way down. I said, I'm not expecting anything. So all of a sudden, the phone rings, and it's Bill Belichick. And he goes, hey, Eddie, Coach Parcells wanted me to give you a call. We just want to make sure this is your number so we know to call you. We're just finishing up the 5th round. I think the Giants had the 5th pick because they weren't good either that year, and the Lions had the 1st pick. And so he said, we're just finishing up the 5th round, and we're going to make you our 6th round pick. And I'm going, oh, okay. And so I'm waiting. I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to be a Giant, right? So time goes by, phone rings again, and he says, hey, hate to tell you this. Someone dropped to us that we didn't expect, so we took him in the 6th round. So back then, they would do the first 6 rounds the first day, and then 7th, 12th was the second day. So he says, hey, Coach Parcells says, look, he doesn't care who falls to him. You're our 7th round pick, okay? Guaranteed, you're our 7th round pick, all right? And so at the time, my wife's cousin was Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers played in the NHL. He played for the Hartford Whalers, played for, I'm trying to think, New York Rangers. But when he played for the Hartford Whalers, he was on Gordie Howe's and Mark Howe's line. And they used to call him the How, and Who line. So they all knew Mark and Marty, but they didn't know who the hell he was. So they used to call him the How, and Who line. But Mike and his wife were in town because of graduation and all this kind of stuff was getting close, and they came in to see us. So we went, partied it up. I'm a giant, all this stuff. So we got back late, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden my phone's ringing, like 7:30 in the morning, and it's someone from the Detroit Lions. Hey Eddie, can you tell us what your junior stats were? And I'm still hungover, and I'm trying to figure this stuff out, and I'm going, God, what did I, what did I do? So I find a media guide, and I tell him, go back to bed. 10 minutes later, someone else from the Lions called, hey Ed, what was your senior stats? I'm like, oh my God, I said, leave me alone. I'm a giant, okay? Well then, of course, time goes by. The second day of the draft starts, so I'm the first pick of the second day. The Detroit Lions had the first pick, right? So they draft me. They call me up and say, hey, Ed, you just drafted. You're our 7th round pick. And I'm going, I thought I was going to be a giant. I was a little upset kind of thing. Well, I'm just kidding. So I'm going, oh, great. I got drafted. And about 10 or 15 minutes later, the phone rings again, and it's Coach Belichick. And he said, hey, Ed, we screwed up. We should have taken you when we wanted to. Look, I'm sure you're going to have a good career in the NFL. Good luck to you, all that kind of stuff. So now we come to, I'm trying to think how long ago it was. I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, there was a preseason game. The Patriots were playing the Lions. And my wife now and I were on the sidelines watching warm-ups. And I told my wife the story of going out to dinner and with Coach Belichick in college and him calling and all this stuff. Now I've had no interaction. I mean, it's 35 years since my draft year, my 1980. I mean, I played against him, but no interaction, no nothing. And she said, hey, I see Coach Belichick walking down the tunnel coming on the field. Go over and say hi to him. And I'm going, why am I going to go say, he's not going to know who the hell I am. So she kind of like pushes me out onto the field. I actually have a picture of it. So they've got a picture. And I sheepishly go, Coach Belichick, hi, and he sees me. And he comes over, he's got a big smile on his face. And shakes my hand. And he goes, hey, Ed, remember the time I took you out to dinner at the Court of Two Sisters? Like that. He remembered 35 years ago, an obscure kicker from Tulane, and he pulled it out 35 years later. And that's why Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. So that's my unusual story with him, but I was like in awe. So my wife happened to take a picture of me with this dumbfounded look on my face after he just brings up that. So long story, but apologies.
But you're drafted by the Detroit Lions, but you're also drafted by the CFL as well for the third round.
Yeah, Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Did you have, was it really?
Well, there's another unusual story with that one too. So that their draft before the NFL draft, and I get a call from one of my high school friends, and he says, hey Ed, congratulations on being drafted. And I said, what do you mean? The NFL draft's not, it's coming up like in a month. He goes, no, the CFL, they just had the CFL draft, and you got drafted by the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the 3rd round. And I'm going, really? I said, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't get called. So I just sat on it. I didn't do anything.
They never called you.
I didn't do anything about it, waiting and waiting. And I remember thinking about it. I said, am I supposed to call them? I mean, how does this work, And so I talked to our sports information guy, ML, and I said, hey, I just found out from some high school friends that I got drafted in the Canadian League. Did they contact you and you forget to, and he goes, I didn't get anything from the CFL. Do you want me to give them a call? And I said, yeah, would you mind to see if it's for sure that I got drafted? So he does. I'm in his office, finds a number, calls the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and they go, yeah, we're meaning to give him a call. Take down this number and call on this day, this time. So I do. I call, and they put me through to like the general manager kind of person. Again, forget who the person's name was. And they go, oh, yeah. We've been meaning to give you a call. All the coaching staff is on vacation because like most after the draft is usually a little bit of a lull with the coaching staff. And so they're all on vacation. And so when they come back from vacation, we'll give you a call and we'll start negotiating a contract. I'm still waiting for them to call me. they never called me at all. Now, granted, that time we were getting now up close to the NFL draft, so maybe they thought, hey, I got drafted in the NFL, I'm not going to come. But I never got a call.
Yes.
I never got a call telling me I got drafted. I had to call them.
That's unbelievable. So 1980, you come into summer camp with the Detroit Lions, and you walk in the locker room for the first day, and you're met by the coaching staff and players. Mm-hmm. What was your feeling? This is big time.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just the apprehension of the elevation of the competition. I definitely had a lot of confidence in my kicking ability. It was just the reality of football then it was a weekly job, any position. It was a weekly job. It's not like it is now. You sign guaranteed contracts and you're there for so long and all this kind of stuff. So back then, they were really weekly jobs. You had to keep your position and do well at your position to make the team and stay on the team. I always used to joke, the easiest thing to do was to make the team. The hardest thing was to stay on the team. So, so for me, to play as long as I did in the NFL, I'm really proud of that. You know, not only just carving 12 years out for the Detroit Lions, but to go to different teams and be an impact and help and, you know, win the Super Bowl with the Cowboys like I did and fit in really quickly and be a calming influence for Coach Johnson when it came to kicking field goals, because he was not really thrilled at what was going on at the time with Lynn Elliott. So, to be able to do that and go in, new cities, new holders, new snappers, all of those kinds of things. So I really worked on my craft to be as good a kicker as I could. So I played to 44. I was very blessed. 19 seasons, and a kid out of Victoria, BC. You know, I have no complaints. I'm very blessed.
So 1980, you had to compete and replace a veteran, Benny Ricardo.
Yeah, Benny. It actually, I felt bad for Benny, but he was going through, he actually walked out on a contract dispute. He was trying to sign a new deal. He had done well and wanted to have a new contract. So he came into camp, and after about a week or so, he walked out of camp. And it was right before preseason. So what that did is just, I became the kicker, because there was no other kicker at the time on the team. It was just he and I. And I forget what it was that preseason. I want to say I was like 12 of 15. I mean, we kicked a ton of field goals, a ton. And having Billy Sims on the team, you know, he was first round pick and all that kind of stuff. He was exciting, bringing a lot of excitement to the offense. And so it made the decision of not signing Benny pretty easy. They go, well, Eddie's doing great, so, you know, we're just going to keep him. And then I ended up having an unbelievable rookie year, you know, got voted into the Pro Bowl as a rookie, which was unusual. And then to be MVP in the Pro Bowl game was just a cherry on the top.
Well, let me read it. After, as a rookie, you replaced Benny, we talked about. You made 27 of 42 field goals, 64%, 35 of 36 extra points, 97%. After winning the NFC scoring title with 116 points and setting a franchise record with 27 field goals, you were named to the Pro Bowl, where you made 5 field goals and became the only rookie to ever receive the MVP award for the game. What was your head like after all this was done? What a year.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was definitely unexpected. I mean, I as a team, we ended up losing the last game of the year against Tampa for us to make the playoffs. So, you know, that part of it was difficult, you know, because everything was so good. Billy was so exciting. We were great off. And of course, we had the Silver Rush defense back then with Doug English and Woodcock and Purifoy and Bubba Baker. And I mean, we really had a good team. We just seemed to just really shoot ourselves in the foot all the time and just kind of let victories just kind of slip through our hands at the end of the game. It was difficult. But for me, it was almost like, okay, I belong here. Okay, now what can I do about staying here? And so I was always tweaking, working on things, training differently, and just really trying to do what I could to play as long as I could.
I'm reading from Wikipedia, the source of all knowledge.
Yeah.
It says, in 1981, you made a last-minute field goal to beat the Cowboys.
Yep.
The play was memorable for the fact that the Lions were able to execute the kick without a huddle and out of a non-kicking formation. Mm-hmm. What did that all mean? What's that mean?
Well, it was kind of funny. So Joe Madden was the special teams coach during that time. It was his first time coaching in the NFL. He was a coach at Tennessee. So he came in with me in 1980. So going into training camp that year, and at training camp, he implemented a drill that we would do at least once, and we were doing 2 days, of course, back then. I mean, nowadays they don't two-a-day practices, but we're in 2 days. And during one of the practices, all training camp, we would have a play when we were working on team drills, where the offense is going against defense, where it would be no timeouts left. We have to kick a field goal to win the game and get in position. And they would time, we would get into position, put the ball down, get the players off the field on offense and put the field goal team on the field, and me kick a field goal, and they would time it. So on average, it was anywhere between, I think the best we did it was like 15, and it would go to 15 to like 21 seconds, that window that we would do it. And we would do it all the time. And I'm going, we are never going to have this situation ever playing football. So we were doing it all training camp. We would do it during the season. And here we are. We're playing the Dallas Cowboys. It's a tight game. Eric Hippel's our quarterback. And we had to make a drive. I think he started the drive around the 25 or 30 yard line of ours. And so we're going down. I knew we were going to have to kick a field goal, but I didn't think it would be the scenario that we'd been working on. And he threw a pass down the seam to Ulysses Norris, our backup tight end. And so we were, for lack of better words, we were going left to right. And I was at the left end of the bench. So when they went over here, I was furthest away from where the ball was. So I'm going, oh, okay, well, they're going to down it. So back then, the rule was to, now they down it, they just throw it in the ground. Back then, you had to take the snap and throw the ball. And when the ball went out of bounds, that's when they stopped the clock. That's how, it was different rule back then. So I'm going, oh, okay, see the play? Oh, we're in field goal range. And I see the clock. So we're in a situation of downing the ball. So Coach Clark is running down it. Joe Madden's running field goal. So I hear field goal, and I'm going, field goal? And so I'm trucking down the sidelines. I see my snapper and a couple other guys going on the field, and then I see some of the other guys who were on the offense. They're all standing there. Like Leonard Thompson, our wideout, was wideout left. He was standing there like a statue on the numbers. And Ulysses Norris, who caught the ball, wasn't on the field goal team, but he's lined up as a tight end like he normally would in the formation. So it ended up, we had 12 guys on the field. And because it was like a Chinese fire drill, so as we were running back and forth and people standing and people going to positions, and I'm running on the field, and Eric's my holder, and he's running back and just semi finds a spot. I run over there, just don't take any steps, just kind of stand over to the left of the ball, and the ball comes back, and I kick a 48-yard field goal, and we win the game. Wow. So the officials are doing this, right? They're trying to count everybody, and people are going back and forth, so they couldn't catch up. So they just called it good. And they ended up, afterwards, there was a picture in the paper of behind us, and They go all the way to the numbers, and they make me the number 12 guy, and I'm going, I should have been number 1. I was the guy kicking the football. It wasn't my fault that this happened, you know. So, but yeah, it was like a Chinese fire drill, running around and all of that, and we beat the Cowboys. So
During that Lions, 12 years, who did you have, who were your principal coaches, head coaches?
Well, Monte Clark drafted me.
Right.
Then they went to Darryl Rogers, and then they went to Wayne Fonts.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had 3 coaches. Yeah.
During that stretch, did you make the playoffs a couple times?
We had 2 winnings. So we had 2 winning seasons,
Right.
but we actually made the playoffs 3 times. So there's a trivia question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had 2 winning seasons, but we made the playoffs 3 times.
All right, tell me.
Okay, so in 1982, we went on strike. We played 9 games that year, and we made the playoffs as a 4-5 team. We lost, of course, but yeah. So yeah, we had 3 winning seasons, and I had 2 playoff years, and one of them was the 82 year, and then it was the 91 season when we were 12-4 and lost out to Washington in the NFC Championship game.
So in 1992, you at the time were the franchise all-time leading scorer, and you still are, right?
No, Jason Hansen's way by me now. Yeah, he played 22 years here. Yeah, he had a great career. Should be in the Hall of Fame.
And at the time, ranked 17th in NFL history, was the 9th Lion to have played in 12 seasons. Was it hard at some point? How did it actually happen where you come in one day and say, Eddie, thanks for the memories, and we're moving on? Well,
that's the reality. I mean, I always knew I had to step away one way, shape, or form. In 1982, that draft, they drafted Jason Hansen. They gave 3 picks up to move up to take the Dallas Cowboys pick, and they took him in the 2nd round. So I could read the tea leaves that I was no longer going to be a Lion. So had conversations with my agent. Hey, this is what the reality is. I don't know what we're going to do. And he says, well, we got to, try to work on a trade if we can. And, we're just, strategizing what to do. And so after the draft, mostly like the following week, most teams will have a mini camp. So they'll have the team from the year before will come in, all the draftees and free agents that they have signed will come in, and we'll have a mini camp, a weekend, like a Friday till Sunday mini camp. And Thursday is always physicals. That's the first time they kind of get their hands on the team from before to see how they're physically doing. So went through a whole day of physicals, being pricked and prodded and pulled, and checking all the joints out and everything, and doing all the stuff. And then the next morning we have a team meeting, and we break. They go into offense and defense. So there was the kickers, and so Jim Arnold was the punter at night, and he and I played most of our years together. And so and Jason wasn't in at that time. He was coming in that day, but because he was from Washington, he came in. He had a later flight or missed something. He was coming in. He wasn't there. And so I thought, I'm going to get changed. I'm just going to go get a workout, get a cardio in, just do something, because they're going to be in meetings till past lunch, and then we'll practice. And so I was getting ready, take my street clothes off and getting ready to put my shorts and shirt on and go work out. And a guy came down on the staff, wasn't a coach, just kind of like a guy on the scouting team, scouting staff came down and says, hey, Coach Fonts wants to see you. And I said, all right. And he said, put your street clothes on. And I thought, that's weird. Street clothes on, coach wants to see me. Is he cutting me? I said, it's mini camp. I mean, I'd just gone through physicals. Why? He could have cut me before that. So now I'm getting upset. I'm going, I can't, is this really going to happen? And sure enough, I go into Coach Fonts' office, and he said, hey, Eddie, the situation, we drafted Jason. And I said, yeah, but are you letting me go or cutting me right now? And he goes, well, yes, I am. And I said, you don't want to see what he's like up against being pushed. I know I'm not going to be here. I know that. I would just like to go to camp and get some preseason games in, and you can cut me, after the first cut if you want to, but I just get in and do all that stuff. And he says, no, I don't want you to mess with his head. And I'm going, well, wouldn't you like to know if he could handle any of this kind of stuff? I mean, I was never mean to anyone. If I got asked for help by kickers, and I had plenty of guys who were really good kickers. Yeah. Hey, reality is we're all replaceable. So if someone's better than me, there's nothing I can do about it. Whether I mess with him or not, they'll show themselves. And so he said, no, I'm letting you go. So I got cut in minicamp, and just had a difficult time trying to catch on that year. I ended up playing one game with Kansas City, and then the last 7 games with Tampa Bay that following year, and then just kind of fell into that kind of leg for hire type of thing.
How does one keep in shape for that? I mean, I mean that's not uncommon, and it happens even today. I mean, my Buffalo Bills just got a kicker here.
Bass got hurt, and then they brought in Prater. Yeah.
And same type of thing.
Well, I again, because of the way I approach things, I was very methodical in what I did. So what I did was I just told myself I was on a team. So what would my schedule be? So every team has basically the same schedule. So if you play a game on Sunday, Monday when you go in, you look at film. So you work out, you get a workout in, cardio, any injury stuff, you kind of go over stuff. So that's kind of a workout day. Tuesday's NFL day off. So if I wanted to rest from a workout, I would be like I would on a team. So Wednesday, Thursday were the big work days. Kick off, work out, do some kicking like I would if I was on a team. Friday was like a half day. We'd go in early, but then leave at noon. And so that's what I would do. So I kept the same schedule as being on a team. Saturday was always no kicking. So you're either traveling, or if you're at home, you're in meetings and you're resting up. So I would get all my maintenance stuff, chiropractor, masseuse, to just get ready for a game like I was playing Sunday. So then Sunday, I would go out and kick like I would be in a game. So I would do situational kicking. I would kick off and just get a good workout in Sunday. And
where would you do all this?
Usually at Cranbrook. So where I lived, Cranbrook it's a private school, boys' school. I think it's girls' school now. It's in Bloomfield Hills, and it wasn't far from where I lived in Southfield. So I'd go there because they had a really quiet, intimate stadium that I'd go and kick there. I did a bunch of different places, but most of the time I'd go there. So that was my mindset. I wouldn't tell myself I was unemployed. I would tell myself I'm on a team, so I've got to keep that schedule. So if I do get picked up, I'm not missing a beat. I'm doing exactly what I would do if I was on a team. So I didn't have to pick up my workouts, or I didn't have to pick up my kicking. I would do like I normally would do if I was on a team.
And at this, all along the time, your agent's telling the NFL team owners that, by the way, he's available and here's what he's doing.
Well, that was the other thing. So my wife Cindy and I would always, we would watch games. We would go to restaurants, sports restaurants, where they would have a bunch of games on, so we can keep an eye on a bunch of games. So my wife said, all right, I got these 3 games over here. You got these 3 games over here. Wow. So we would just watch and see who was doing well and not doing well, and certain situations would happen. So I would report back Sunday night to my agent, hey, Chicago's guy, missed a game-winning kick, lob him a call, see if they're wanting to bring some guys in, or it looked like so-and-so got hurt. There's no update. Can you find out what's going on? So I was given information. Again, just trying to take control of my situation and try to help my agent out as best I can, because he's not going to put the effort in like I would to evaluate the kicking situation week to week. So that's what we would do. We would just, my wife helped me out a lot with all that stuff, keeping stats, and just get the information to my agent.
You crushed me, Eddie. I want you to know that. Because being a Bills fan, you did sign with the Dallas Cowboys. You made Jimmy Johnson happy. You created a situation where I was at that Super Bowl 28. and there were 2 Canadian kickers.
Yeah, Steve Christie.
Steve Christie.
Yeah,
and
great
they
kicker.
They made a big deal out of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it might have been the only time there had been 2 Canadians. Yeah,
And you side after the first half, we were feeling like maybe,
yeah,
and then you
Yeah.
guys crushed us.
yeah. And the defense stepped up. Yeah, yes, they did. Yeah,
And I've been noticing the bling that's on your
yes,
finger there. That's
yeah. I wish you said Detroit on it, but I'm very proud of it.
yeah, well, you should
Yeah.
be. And
Yeah.
I must tell you that Amy was thrilled when you were at the Grand Rapids opening. That there on the one end, at least, there was a Super Bowl winning guy holding the ribbon
Ribbon.
for the cut.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So tell me a little bit about you. You've had a chance to work with, certainly got your coaches and assistant coaches that were the kicking coaches, but certain head coaches had certain personalities, and Jimmy Johnson mentioned him,
Sure.
and 3 other that you had in the Lions. Did you get a sense of style that either helped you or hindered you, or maybe they just kind of let you be? The kind of the kicker that's at the end of the bench, and all you got to do is make sure you kick it when we need it.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do because I had 12 years with one team, so I pretty much established myself as a quality kicker. I always used to look at it this way. So that when I came in the league, there were 30 teams. Now there are 32 teams. Am I the 33rd worst kicker? No, I don't think I am. So that means I deserve a job somewhere, so I got to find out where that is. So I always kept that mentality that I still have the ability to compete in this league if someone gives me the opportunity. And my wife always used to say, we just need someone to see you. So I just needed to get a workout because basically every workout when I got called in by a team, I made the team. So that had a lot to just do with my DNA of how I handled things. I couldn't be down about anything when I was unemployed. I had to still keep the mentality. Like I said, I'm still playing. I'm on a team. So I kept that routine. That helped me a lot to stay focused. And it just prepared me when I did get a call to go work out.
So after the Cowboys and winning the bling, beating the Bills, did I mention that? And prior to that, though, and this is important for the tape, that you made the game-winning field goal in overtime in the regular season finale against the Giants, which determined the NFC East title. And your home field advantage, that made a big difference.
It was at the time, and Coach Johnson has mentioned it in his book, and he's said it in interviews. If Eddie hadn't made that kick, we wouldn't have won the Super Bowl. So during that game was the game that Emmett separated his shoulder and ended up running for 70 yards with a separated shoulder after that game. And the reason why he says if I hadn't made that kick, was the NFC East was so close at that time that if we lost the game, we would have had to have come back in the wild card game to play the Giants. If we won the game, we would have won the NFC East and got a week off. That gave Emmett 2 weeks to get ready for the playoff run. And Jimmy says if we didn't have that, gave 2 weeks for him to get healthy, we would not have gone on the run we did and won the Super Bowl. Yeah. So, at the time, it was just we're just trying to win, not knowing those circumstances were all going to kind of fall into place. But, that was, I was very proud of that kick in that situation.
And that's one of, obviously, many. Was there a highlight kick, one where you kind of were sent out on the field, says, after you got it, goes through the uprights, the arms go up, you say, "Wow, that's an extraordinary kick."
Well, that one is the highlight of it, and I've been on the other end of it with Detroit in the playoffs. I missed a kick at the end of the game against the 49ers in I think it was the wild card round, that would have won the game for us to move on, and I missed it. So I've had both ends of it, So it's always how you handle it afterwards,
right.
And the tough thing with playoff games is I can't come back the next week and redeem myself. I have to wait the whole off season, and I'm just, reliving that kick over and over. So that year for me was difficult, and I know I was really driven about not being in that situation again. Right. Unfortunately, I didn't. I played, like I said, 12 years with Detroit, had 2 playoff games, so we were not good for a lot of those years, and then after that it was. Playoff was with the Cowboys in '93 winning the Super Bowl. Then I made the playoffs with the Cowboys when I went back and played for them in '99. So I didn't have a lot of playoff experience, but it's difficult sometimes when you're in those situations. But I always look at how you handle it afterwards.
You're wearing a Lions jersey now, or your shirt, golf shirt. In 1999, they actually felt so strongly about you that despite having a lapse of about 7 years, they hired you back for one day so you could retire as a Lion.
Yes.
That had to make you feel good.
Yeah. When I was in that year, it wasn't '89 because I played till '91. So with the Lions. So I'm trying to think when it was. It was 95, I want to say, because it was after I went to Philly, after Dallas, went to Washington, and then I didn't play. So it was after that year. I was
You're the Redskins in '95, the Vikings '97.
Yeah, '96. So that '96 year, I wasn't playing. I was still working out the whole year, and I did not play the whole year. So that was interesting, having to do all of that. But I thought I was done. So someone said about, you're going to retire, and I said, if I'm going to retire, I'm going to retire as a Lion. So I asked the Lions if they would do that for me, and they did. Not knowing that I would end up being called the next year to come and play for the Cowboys at the end of the year, and then I played the last 7 games for Washington the following year.
That's unbelievable. That you're now 43, 44 years old.
I was 44 my last year, yes.
I must tell you, I've done a lot of interviews, and but the only time I've ever interviewed a football player who was a kicker was a guy named Gary Anderson.
Oh, Gary's a great guy.
To be up and
he should be in the Hall of Fame also, I think.
Yeah. So, but I noticed that your career and his overlapped a couple times. Where
yeah, we ended up taking each other's job. It was like, he was taking my job. That's what ended up happening. So when I was with Philly, Rich Kotite, I was the Philadelphia Eagles' very first free agent signee in history. So that's when free agency that we're under now started. And I remembered it was like midnight when free agency started, and my agent calls me like at 10 after 12 saying, hey, I got a call from the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's the offer. And you have 30 minutes to say yes or no. And I'm going, really? They said, yeah, they're coming hard at you, and they want to move on. So I agreed to the terms, so I was their very first signee at the time. And then the following year went in, he got fired in the offseason, and Ray Rhodes got signed as the head coach. Ray was at San Francisco, defensive coordinator, if I recall. So he came in as the head coach. Well, the kicker for the 49ers was Gary Anderson. So he brought Gary in, and he cut me. And so we were kind of lopping each other off at the knees for a few teams.
Does it ever? Do you wake up in the morning and know that the statistic where while you were with the Lions, you led the team in scoring in each of the first 10 seasons until 1990 when you had an injury, and then there was a guy, I think it was Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders guy, yeah. I think I've heard of him. Yeah, he was pretty special.
Played with Barry Sanders, and did you kind of appreciate him in the moment of what he really was?
Well, I was asked this on another podcast by Mitch Lyons, who was the tight end at Michigan State, and I equate it to this. So when you're an athlete and you're in high school, there's always like one guy that kind of separates themselves in high school, right? Oh my God, that guy's such a great athlete. He plays both ways. He's on this team and that team, and you go to college, and there's always like that one guy that's on the team that is like, oh my God, that guy is big or fast or is good or whatever it is. So when Barry came on the team, it was like, that guy's going to be amazing. He just does things differently that you never see. I mean, he would do, because back then we would hit each other in practice. Now they don't do that. They've collectively bargained that they can't hit. So, we'd be in team drills during midway through the season, and they'd work on goal line or they'd work on whatever short yardage type of stuff. And Barry would make some kind of a juke and go away and run, and it would be quiet in the Silverdome. We'd be practicing indoors, and it would just be quiet, and he would run back and throw the ball to the ball boy and just stand there, and then we're going, what the hell was that? What did you just do? And he goes, I don't know. He just was so nonchalant about how he reacted, because he was just amazing. He could stop and turn on a dime and put the afterburners on, and he was amazing.
Like Jimmy Brown, he sort of stopped at the zenith of his career. Did you get a sense of why that really was?
Well, I know they did a documentary about everything, and everybody had their opinions about kind of what was going on. And of all things, it really wasn't anything earth-shattering. It was, hey, I've done what I've done. I'm happy about what's going on. But I'm also at a point, age-wise, that I don't want to rebuild anymore. And that's what the Lions were doing. And he said, I've had enough. They were getting rid of players that were, the Spielmans, the Lomas Browns, the Glovers. All these guys were now being cut, or they were retiring and moving on. And Barry thought, hey, I don't want to go through a rebuild. And I'd rather just save my body. I've had a very good career, and I'm stepping away. So I can't blame him.
Yeah.
I thought the timing he did it was a little poor. I think he could have told the Lions before the draft that he was doing that, rather the day he was supposed to report to camp.
Yeah.
But that's his choice. That's his choice. I respect the decision and what he did.
You're very active in the Lions Alumni Association. During this time, many years, is there a guy or two that you've kind of intersected who you'd say there's a sort of a wow factor that had a legend? And it come to mind like Joe Schmidt. I mean, there's, still lived for a long period of time. Is he still alive?
He is still alive. Yeah, he lives down in Florida now. Yeah.
But, just a guy who'd been the corner post. Are there guys like that you just sort of were, I hate to use the term awe. I mean, you're all professional football players. But.
Well, it is awe. I mean, for me, it was because, like I said, I didn't grow up wanting to be a pro football player and a kicker. I wanted to be a football player in England and play soccer. So to be around these guys and know what they had all gone through, and there was a lot of that. I used to love going to events back in the early 80s. In fact, it impacted me, actually, my rookie year. Speaking of that, remember they had an event at Allen Park Bowl, which was a big bowling lane, would have professional bowling tournaments there. And they had an event through WJR where they had a JR personality, a sports celebrity, or media celebrity person, and then people would sign in to play as a three-man team for a charity outing. And so we have the event. It's a fun event. And afterwards, they had like a little pizza party for everybody. And I remember sitting there, and there was, like I'm saying, Joe Schmidt and Jerry Kramer and, Lucci, Alex Delvecchio from the Wings, and just sitting there. So I always used to I wouldn't go with the players. I'd go over to the old guys and sit there and just listen to them talk about stuff and all that. And I remembered way back then, Joe Schmidt turned to me and says, hey, Ed, you're having a hell of a rookie year. What are you going to do in the off season? And I said, well, I think I'm going to go back to Victoria. And he said, well, what's back there for you? And I said, well, both my parents are deceased, and my brother was living in California, and my sister at the time was living back in Victoria with her husband. And I said, I really, have my wife's family who's back there. And he said, well, if you haven't made home yet, you should make Detroit home. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, they love their athletes here. There's a lot of things to do, get involved in the community, do charity work, all this kind of stuff, and go get a job. I'm going, get a job? What the hell do I want to get a job for? And he goes, go get a job. And that's the best advice I got. I've been living here since 1980. I've raised my family here. I took a job every off season for 19 years in the NFL. I did something. A lot of it back then with athletes were repping automotive, new business, sales, all kinds of stuff. I was a franchise director for Mr. Bulky candy stores for like 10 years. Mortgage mortgage loans, nuts and bolts and screws, advertising special. I mean, I did it all. I did all kinds of stuff. But I embedded myself in the community. So a lot of that community stuff is doing charity work or doing appearances at things and all that kind of stuff. But I worked every year. I played football. So then in 2000, my wife now, she had, at the time, she had her own court reporting firm. She had it for 40 years. And I said, this is it, I'm retiring. And she said, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I'm going to go get a job. Says, you're not going to take any time off? I said, you've been playing football for as long as you have, and you've always worked. And I said, no, I'm going to go get a job. So I've been working in the Detroit area for 45 years, whether I'm kicking a football or representing some kind of a company, or as what I'm doing now, the past 14 years, working for Hope Network, a nonprofit based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Tell me about Hope Network.
Hope Network just celebrated 60 years last year. They're a behavioral health nonprofit. They're one of the largest nonprofits in the state of Michigan. About $180 million, 3,000 employees, providing autism services, neuro rehab, physical therapy, workforce development, group homes, about workforce development. We have the largest independent transportation system in Michigan. We provide transportation in a 5-county area around Grand Rapids for people that get services for us. And we service about 40,000 people in Michigan with behavioral health services, kind of that. So I got involved, like I said, 14 years ago. Phil Weaver, God rest his soul, he just passed recently, but our CEO at the time, I was asked to help bring memorabilia to an event locally here for an organization called Hope Network, and would I help? And I said, sure, I'll help them. A neighbor friend of mine knew the guy who was putting on the tournament, and I love playing golf. I'm an avid golfer, and I love doing the charity stuff. And they said, well, would you like to play? And I said, yeah, of course I'd love to play. So after the event, Phil thanked me for, helping out, and said, can I take you to lunch next week? I'd like to talk to you. Met him for lunch, and he offered me a board position. So I said, well, look, I've never sat on a board, okay? I don't know what I can do for you, but, tell me, what it would entail. And he says, I just need you to be an ambassador. We have a board, mostly of philanthropic people up in Grand Rapids area. Dan DeVos has been on our board for 25 years, and the usual suspects up there, the Herman Millers and the Myers and Steelcases and all of the people up in that area sit on the board. He said, but we don't have anybody in Southeast Michigan, and you're the first person. That would be it, are you interested? So I did. I told him, yeah, why not? Every quarter I'd drive up to Grand Rapids, sit in board meetings, started having a golf event at Oakland University for them. We just had our 11th annual tournament for Hope Network there. And I was working. I was working for a wiring cable company, low voltage wiring and fiber optics. We did a lot of stuff with a lot of the cell towers and all that kind of stuff, and I was a salesperson for them. We had another company come in and buy us out. And after 9 months, redundancy was in place, and so they kind of fired a bunch of people. So I got let go. I wasn't doing anything. I said, hey, I have a you. I'm just letting you go. I don't need you. So I went to the next board meeting about a month later, and Phil was asking what was going on. I said, I just lost my job. I'm looking around, for something to do. And he said, well, let's talk after. I went into his office after the board meeting, and he says, how about if I start paying you for what you've been doing for free? And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, I want to hire you. You're going to have to step down as a board member, but I want to give you a job. And he asked what I was making where I was. He said, no problem. So for the past 8 years, I've been an employee of Hope Network. I stepped down as a foundation board member, and I'm Director of Donor Relations for Southeast Michigan.
And also making appearances at the opening of Rebel Now in Grand.
Mostly there, yes. I'm on retainer with Amy for any openings that she may have. Yes.
He's now the agent also for Odin.
Yes, yeah. He's quite the impressive young man.
I should say, for the camera, it's DJ Radical Me.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you were on the 75th anniversary Detroit Lions team, and they announced you, and there's posters. And like, what's that mean to an Eddie Murray?
Well, to be put into that team was a huge honor for me. I mean, you know, the Lions are one of, you know, the original teams back then. 1934 is when they were the Portsmouth Spartans. I think they were back then, if I remember right. And so, with all of the great players that had played before, and to, you know, be on that team. I think it was, you know, because they both had Jason and myself as kickers for the 75th, and you know, to be in his company also, because I have a lot of respect for Jason. I know it was difficult for him coming here after me, and he handled himself amazingly and carved out an unbelievable career. Like I said, I think he should be in the Hall of Fame, and why his name doesn't come up enough, I don't know why. But yeah, and I know it was difficult for him, and he did a phenomenal job and had a great career here. But yeah, I was very honored to be part of that team.
You knew you were coming here today, hopefully willingly. And was there a question today that you expected to be asked that you haven't been asked?
No, not really. I mean, like I said, you know, I know I have a unique story, and living my life, I didn't know it was unique. I just, a lot of it had to do with, you know, my parents and their influence that they had, got me to here, and I can't thank them enough.
I can't thank you enough. This is terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time to come here today and share your story for the congregation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.